Hey everybody, it's Dr. May. How are you? I hope you're good tonight. We're in for another episode of Radically Open DBT. Hope you're ready for it and feeling radically open today. So this one is called Flexible Mind is Deep, okay? And it's kind of good. It's not particularly long, but it's pretty useful. So I hope you like it. All right, let's get this a little bit bigger. All right, so I brought us down deep into the ocean to remind us about flexible mind is deep, okay? And this is about identifying valued goals, primarily in the context of relationships, all right? So let's get started, right? So DEEP is the acronym we're working with. So I'm gonna take you through that acronym and then we'll summarize it at the end, all right? So first for letter D, there's a few slides for this one. So determine your valued goal and the emotion you wish to express. Okay, so there's a few smaller steps within this one. All right, so step one, reflect on the level of intimacy you would like to have with the person you have in mind. Okay, so that could be different depending on the situation. All right, so for example, on a more casual end, maybe there's just some acquaintances you have that you'd like to improve the relationship with, or some casual friends. And, maybe you want to keep things friendly, but, non-emotional, maybe just keep socially acceptable topics, kind of light topics, casual, talking about the weather, talking about sports, things like that. And that's fine, right? And that may be all you want. Okay, no problem. All right, kind of somewhere in the middle. Maybe you want to share a little bit more personal information. So maybe about your personal emotions, or maybe things you're feeling a little judgmental about, or maybe things you prefer. And it's not always stuff that's always socially acceptable. Sometimes, you might have to trust the person a little bit more to reveal some of what you really think, because you might be a little afraid of being judged. So it requires a little bit more connection, maybe, right? Whereas when it's very casual, you tend to stick with more socially acceptable topics that you're pretty sure won't be judged by anybody because you don't know them that well, maybe, right? Okay, but on the more intimate level, maybe you're in a more serious, committed relationship with somebody and you want to make it more serious, more intimate, right? So maybe you want to profess your love to somebody, right? You want to say the L word, I love you, right? Or maybe, you're thinking, I want to reveal something more deeply personal, some things I rarely talk to anybody about, or never told anybody about. So maybe some deeper vulnerabilities, or, things that you wouldn't tell anybody else. And if you really care for the person, you might even be willing to make sacrifices for the relationship, like put certain things of your life aside in order to benefit the relationship. So that's a sign that you want to deepen it, right? But that's kind of like all the way at the higher level of intimacy, right? So it could be somewhere in the middle, doesn't really matter, but just kind of maybe think about what's the goal you want in this particular relationship you're going to use for your example, okay? All right. So here we go. Step two. All right. So identify valued goals that you'll need to live by in order to achieve your desired level of intimacy. So in order to achieve whatever is the level that you decide on, what kind of goals go along with that? Okay. So if you have the skills manual, they have literally like 3 pages in small print of a huge list of all kinds of examples of valued goals. And I wish I could share more with you, but the conversation would go on way too long. Okay, the video would start to get too boring. So I'm going to share a few with you just to give you some ideas. But obviously, this is not an exhaustive list, and you could certainly come up with your own. Okay, so valued goals are kind of a combination of values and a little bit more specific goals, how you apply them. Okay, so here's some examples. To let go of control when the situation calls for it. Right? Sometimes we try to over control people or over control a relationship, and sometimes letting it go is the best thing, and that helps the connection, right? To respect myself and others, okay? To apologize to those I have harmed and repair the damage if possible. Definitely would improve a relationship, right? Or be a step toward it. To forgive those who have harmed me. So in terms of like, I might have to let go of my resentments and start to like, rebuild again. To see all humans as equal. Okay, so instead of thinking of yourself as one up or one down, try to be toe to toe with people and see them on an equal plane as a human being, right? To acknowledge when I succeed without arrogance. Okay, to accept those things I cannot change. right? We might have to accept the other person and their little quirks. We might have to accept our emotional reactions to people. We might have to accept that the relationship isn't perfect, right? Lots of little things. To let others know, sorry, I left out the S, to let others know when I love or admire them. It'd be tricky to say the L word, right? To revel in the success of others without resentment. That's a tricky one, right? I'll add or envy, right? Sometimes it's hard to be glad for people when they succeed when you really wish it was you, right? Ugh. And finally, to love and be loved. And sometimes, as you might have experienced, like it can actually be harder to receive the love than it even is to give. But both could be a challenge, right? So sometimes working on those goals can help foster more intimacy in the relationship, okay? And you know, the goal you pick would depend on exactly, again, how much intimacy you're thinking about, okay? So we got figuring out the intimacy, figuring out the valued goals. Next, step 3, identify the emotion related to your valued goal and the primary channel of expression needed to effectively communicate that emotion, right? So Radically Open DBT has a big emphasis on the social signaling angle. So when you're trying to improve the relationship, it's important to socially signal the right kind of thing to foster that improved intimacy and better relationship. Okay, so this is pretty cool. There's some cool tips here. All right, so they break it down into 3 major sections. I'll move myself here. Okay, so first is using the body channel to express our emotions. So they say the body channel is most often used when you're expressing social status related emotions, right? So if you're trying to be more confident or you're trying to show yourself to be, you know, one up, so to speak, you got to have bigger, more open body posture. Like that woman, right? She's probably showing like pride, you know, like, you know, yeah, I'll go me, right? So she's kind of putting herself in a more confident position. Sometimes we have to show more deference. We have to be a little bit more one down. So we kind of shrink our body posture a little bit, okay? The facial channel. So that one's they call for quote unquote survival emotions, right? So for example, if I'm angry, it's a fight emotion. If I'm afraid or fearful, it's a flight emotion, right? And other times we have other related things like disgust. If I'm disgusted, I have to expel something in order to get the poison out of me. So that's why all these are kind of survival emotions, all right? But the typical ones that we usually think about fall in this category. So things like anger, disgust, fear, enjoyment, happiness, and sadness, okay? All right, so next, the touch channel. So if you wanna foster more intimacy in the relationship and express intimate emotions, usually it's important to touch and be touched, okay, as you may have figured out, okay? So things like love, things like sympathy or caring or empathy. Sometimes a light touch or a certain appropriate touch helps to foster that goal, okay? So what I found with this skill is that it's easier to think of the categories sometimes than it is to think of the specific emotions, but whatever works for you. So for example, okay, sorry, I lost the thought. Let's keep going. All right. So we finished the D for deep. Now we're on the first E, but they actually smuggled in like 4 E's. So it's really like D, E, 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 P. Okay, so the first set of E's is effectively expressed by matching nonverbal signals with valued goals during the interaction. Okay, so now that we planned it out, okay, so we planned it out by thinking, how intimate do I want to be? What are my valued goals to reach that level of intimacy? And how am I going to express it? Now you have to do it. Okay, so now you're with the person and you're actually going to effectively express this the best you can during the interaction. Okay, so by matching your nonverbal signals, right, meaning this stuff, with your valued goals, meaning that stuff. Okay, so this is a lot of information to process. I hope this is not too much, but anyway, so I'm going to give you a series of examples, and these examples are provided in the manual, but I made some visuals to make it like easier to picture it. Okay, so let's say your valued goal is to be taken seriously. Okay, so the nonverbal signal that would go with that is, let's say, confidence or gravity. Like gravity has to do with seriousness, right? And you would use the body channel for social status to express something such as pride, right? So I'm going to be taken seriously. I'm not going to shrink down and make myself small. I'm going to say, you know what? I have a right to be here. I'm going to, stand proud, right? So I'm going to make good eye contact. I'm going to speak calmly but firmly, right? Keep my chin up, not kind of shrink down, right? And keep my shoulders back. Okay, so I'm using my body channel to help express my desire to be taken seriously. Okay, and sometimes that could be important in a relationship, right? If someone takes me more seriously, it might advance the relationship. Okay, so let's go to the second one. Valued goal here is to establish a close bond. Okay, and that could be with, here it looks like parents and a son, maybe, right? Nonverbal signal would be, let's say, friendliness, and the touch channel could be used to signal intimacy or love, all right? But plus some other body language as well, all right? So let's say you're gonna now show warm smiles, eyebrow wags, which is, like using your eyebrows to help signal, right? Head nodding, so when someone's talking, you might nod a little bit. A musical tone of voice, kind of prosodic, that has some ups and downs in it, right? Musical. Taking turns when speaking to kind of show, you're interested in listening to them as well as speaking, okay? Open-handed gestures, which shows that you're open to receiving the person and, being close to them. And maybe an occasional gentle touch on the arm or some kind of friendly touch that's appropriate, okay? So there you go. Here we go. Example 3. So let's say my valued goal is to be forthright and honest, right? That could always help a relationship because we need to be honest with each other in order to trust each other. So here, the nonverbal signal, be honest, is to express on the outside what I feel on the inside, right? Otherwise, I'm being dishonest because I'm masking my emotions. So part of the honesty is to show somebody what's really going on, okay? So for an example, let's say this woman is trying to show her honest emotions by allowing her boyfriend or her husband or whoever that is to see that she's sad. So she's not going to paste a smile on her face when she's sad. She's going to actually allow him to see her sadness. So the inside is being shown on the outside. So she uses her facial channel to express this survival emotion of sadness, right? So you could see on her face that she looks kind of down, all right? And in return, she's getting some care, okay, which is important in getting closer and more intimate in a relationship. Okay, so down below, let's say the value goal is to be fair-minded, right? So the nonverbal signal would be openness, right? To be fair, I can't just be the only one talking and expressing myself. I have to listen to the other person, hear them out, right? Try to respect their point of view, okay? So I'm going to nonverbally signal that openness to the person and use my body channel to signal equality and non-dominance, right? So when I'm being open to somebody, I can't show like I'm arrogant or like I'm above them, like I know better, because that's not really being fair, right? I'm kind of showing, well, I know it all already, right? And if I'm shrinking down too much, that may not help either. So we got to be somewhere in the middle, showing equality, but receptivity, okay? So how can we do that? Okay, so you can lean back in your chair, shrug your shoulders a little to show non-dominance, like a kind of receptivity, open-handed gestures, right? Eyebrow wags, again. Try to match their facial expression, like mirroring in a nonverbal way. So if they express concern or a little sadness, you kind of, react appropriately with your face. Take deep breaths to stay relaxed, because you may be listening to things that aren't always easy to hear, but you're hearing them out. And use another musical tone of voice, just like we talked about in that other example. Okay, so that's how you could signal equality and non-dominance, right? Next, this is the last example. All right, so let's say my value goal is to not be arrogant. Okay, I'm trying to tone it down a little bit. So my nonverbal signal would be humility, okay? Humility comes from the root humus, which means of the earth. And if I'm of the earth, then I'm just like every other human being, and I'm not any better or any worse than anybody else, okay? So my body channel or status is gonna show equality and non-dominance again, okay? So this is gonna show things like slightly bowing my head, right? So I'm not gonna be looking down my nose at people, my head cocked back, right? Maintain eye contact, compassionate tone of voice, shrugging my shoulders a little bit, also a sign of non-dominance, and open-handed gestures, sign of openness, right? So opposite of arrogance, where you're not open, you're being very open. Okay, I hope these help with these examples. But here's some general tips, okay, that they offer to us. So when you express these things, it could be, you know, a little scary, right? Because you're maybe doing something a little different than usual, okay? And you might kind of come in here with some expectations. Like, listen, I'm going to try this thing, but this better damn work. It better advance this relationship. It better make the person like me. It better smooth over these problems we had. It better, you know, whatever. Okay. So you got to go in and lighten up your expectations. Okay. And not have a demand on what the person's supposed to do in return, or how they're supposed to react, or what they're supposed to non-verbally show you, right? You could only control what you're putting out there, right? So you need to just do it for the sake of do it. Do it for the sake of knowing that it helps to practice openly expressing yourself, okay? And sometimes, you know, if you're doing something new, the person may not know what to make of it, right? Like if you're normally much more closed and you're not very expressive, and now you're trying to be expressive, they might be like, what's up with that? What are you doing? I never saw that before. So be patient with them, right? It takes people a little while to, you know, get used to us if we're doing something a little new, all right? So give them the benefit of the doubt that if they didn't respond exactly the way you wanted to, it may not be bad, right? Maybe they just are trying to think about what you said or trying to take it all in, or maybe they're just not really good at nonverbal expression themselves. You know, there could be a variety of things, right? So just do it for the sake of doing it, do the best you can, and let it go, right? And if you had conflict with somebody, we'll talk about that more later, you know, just, you know, be patient with them, okay? Because it takes a while of being open and trusting to, you know, make the relationship better. Okay, so now we're gonna go to the second pair of E's. So this is like the second big E on DEEP, all right? So after the interaction, all right, we did all that. We expressed ourselves using one of the three channels, expressing our emotions with desired goals related to the level of intimacy we want, right? So now we're done, okay? We're sitting back, you know, by ourselves thinking about it. We could use a little self-inquiry to examine the outcome and learn from it, right? So self-inquiry, spelled with an E or an I, however you prefer it, is basically, you know, asking yourself questions to kind of reflect on things, to kind of learn a little bit more, to take you to your personal edge where you might be a little uncomfortable learning something new, but in a helpful way, okay? So here's some questions you could ask yourself, but obviously ask yourself other ones if that helps more, okay? So did your openness appear to change the other person's openness during the interaction? If so, how did they express it? And what might this tell you? Okay, so sometimes, you know, when we're more open, it makes the other person feel more comfortable being open, right? So we influence each other. So maybe you notice that they were a little bit more open, or maybe not. Maybe you thought you were being open and you weren't as open as you thought. Who knows? Okay. Did the interaction go as you might have hoped or expected? And if not, then what is it that you might need to learn? Okay, so perhaps you might have to keep working on your technique, right? It takes a little while. Or maybe, you know, you did the best you could, but the other person has something going on, okay? We have to be open to the possibility. Do you feel closer or farther away from the other person after the interaction? And what might this tell you, okay? So sometimes, you know, our openness makes us feel closer to a person because we're sharing more of ourselves, okay? Other times you might have felt like, oh boy, I was open and now it freaked me out and I'm pulling away. But it depends, you know, you have to really just check it out and see how you feel, okay? All right, and last, is there a part of you purposefully trying to make this difficult for yourself, the other person, right? What might this tell you and what is it you might need to learn? Okay, so if you're purposefully trying to make it difficult, perhaps you're a little afraid, right? Maybe, you know, doing something new is a little hard. It's hard to change. You know, it feels a little risky, right? So you could be putting up some roadblocks here or there. So if that's the case, you know, look at what the fears are. What's holding me back, okay? And kind of, you know, explore that a little bit. All right, so this is the self-inquiry part. So this part, I would say, is a little bit more on the examine part because it's not really questions per se, but still some stuff worthy of thinking about. So one, they talk about to kind of quote unquote celebrate diversity, okay? So let's say, I'm learning the flexible mind is deep skill, and I feel like now I have this knowledge that other people don't have, and and I'm expressing through the body channel and the facial channel, and non-dominance and whatever and now I think I know better than the person I'm dealing with in terms of how things should be expressed. And now I'm judging them because they're not doing it the way I think they should do it. They don't know this technique like I know it now. Okay, but listen, we all have our own unique styles of expression, right? And we're not here to judge anybody, right? Mine may not be better than yours. We're just different, right? We're different individuals and we have our own little quirks and nuances, right? And also, we can't expect them to act and behave like us, right? They're going to be them and we got to be us, right? So practice your own openness, expressing yourself and your goals and values through your body channels and facial expressions and stuff, but don't worry about them, all right? They may or may not act the way you want, but you just do the best you can. And at the same time, it's important for us to keep being willing to go beyond our comfort zone, and try to match the expression of the other person, right? So we could also go in with a goal of how we want to express ourselves, but also be responsive to what they're putting out there and maybe adjust ourselves to mirror the other person better, okay? And that could help the relationship too, right? Because we need that kind of mirroring nonverbal interaction. Okay, so let's say, all right, afterwards, I'm feeling a little funny about it, right? I'm angry because this person didn't act the way I wanted them to or whatever. I have to take responsibility for whatever the emotional reaction is that I'm feeling, right? Or I could be feeling shame because, I put myself out there and I didn't really get the acceptance or praise or response that I wanted, and now I feel funny. Okay, so whatever it is, that's my emotion. Okay, I can't point a finger and say, well, it's their fault because they didn't respond in this particular way. Okay, I can't control the outcome. I can only control me. And if I have an emotional reaction, that's on me too. Okay, because it's based on my interpretation of the situation. Okay, it's nobody else's fault. So we just got to remember that. Okay, but on a more positive note, you celebrate your success, right? If you gave it a try and you're willing to do it, and you tried your best, give yourself a pat on the back or a mini round of applause or whatever works for you. Give yourself a high five, okay? Because maybe you made a step toward your relationship goal, right? And you made a step toward living toward your values. So that's pretty good, right? So it doesn't have to be perfect. You're making a step, right? So we got to give ourselves props. All right. So finally, we made it to the P of deep, okay? So the idea is don't just do this once, okay? It's not going to be enough. It's kind of like doing one jumping jack and saying, yeah, I think I'm good. Okay, yeah, good. I did it already and I know the scoop, okay? No, you really have to practice this again and again, okay? Especially if it's not something that's really comfortable for you and it's not like a natural part of your expressive repertoire, okay? So try to find opportunities to keep practicing open expression. And it might feel a little bit like opposite action, as they say in regular DBT. So doing the opposite of what you feel like doing or what your natural inclination is, but you got to keep trying to find chances to do it, and you'll get better and better, okay? So here's the examples they give in the manual, okay? So let's say you're at church or some kind of a gathering like that. So instead of sitting silently when everyone else is singing, try joining in the singing. All right, you're putting yourself out there a little bit, maybe, but it's a risk that might be worth taking. Another thing is, let's say instead of holding back and avoiding talking to somebody you're a little attracted to, if you're still in the dating scene, maybe ask the person out for coffee or something, or even someone you feel like maybe we could be friends. Like maybe you're in a club together, but you never, hung out one-on-one. Maybe take a chance and just say, hey, you want to take a walk one day? Why not, right? So you're taking the chance of being more open about your desire to connect with that person. Other times, we might feel like nobody cares, or feel like, oh, geez, like no one really showing me the caring I wish they would show me. So you know what? Maybe you go out and show someone caring, like put it out there, and who knows, maybe one day it'll come back to you. Okay, so if you offer caring to other people, sometimes that's a sign of openness, and it could really pay off, because helping others also helps ourselves and builds relationships. Okay, so another thing to point out too the third bullet on the bottom is to remember that although it feels like a risk, you know, when you openly express yourself, the people in your life that are meant to be in your life that will really care will love you for who you are. And so you don't have to put on a front with the people that actually care about you, right? Showing your real self to them is going to only help the relationship. Okay. So there you go. One more P. So this is also important. If you have, let's say, a highly conflictual relationship with somebody, but it's also an important one. So let's say, you know, you're in a romantic relationship with somebody and there's some tension between the two of you. Because maybe you haven't really been able to openly express yourself. And so you're in a pursuer-distancer relationship where your partner keeps pursuing you, trying to get you to open up, trying to get you to react, and you're just very stony with that person. And the more the person pursues, the more you clam up, right? And it creates a problem. So now you're saying, well, gee, I'm going to try some open expression with this person, and maybe it'll help my relationship with my partner. So, you know, you try being a little open, and you might be afraid of it because you're thinking, oh, geez, like you're just going to glom onto me even more. But sometimes, you know, when you're a little more open, they back off a little bit more. They don't have to chase you as much. So it actually could be okay. Other times, you know, there might be a situation where, let's say, you cheated on your spouse and now they don't trust you because all this time you were lying and hiding information about what you really were doing. So you have to rebuild the trust. So you have to rebuild trust by being much more open, right? Okay, so this is an important skill for even things like that. But the idea is like, you have to be really patient with the person, you know, and you have to be consistent because consistency is what builds the trust. When you do it all the time and you're more transparent, you're open about how you feel, you know, you're trying to express yourself, you know, more clearly and openly, and you do it all the time, that's what makes it better. So you got to be patient. It can't just happen immediately. You can't just do it once and be like, okay, that's enough, right? So commit to it no matter what, let go of the outcome, but just trust that if I keep doing it, there's a good chance it could get better. And also, you know, sometimes you're just not in the mood, right? But don't stop just because, let's say, you're tired or it's feeling like it's too much work, you know, or they're too dependent and I can't take it anymore. If I'm too open, I'm too afraid of it. Just try to go anyway. Even if you can't see the end of the road, know that the road's going to keep going, right? That there's a good destination at the end of the road. And in general, you know, we have to remember that if you want to rebuild a relationship or improve a relationship, it takes work, right? It's just realistic to acknowledge that it may not just happen naturally and easily. You might have to really make a concerted, consistent effort to be more open to make it work, okay? And one thing that can help as well is to go outside the relationship and seek feedback from a neutral person. So such as like a therapist maybe, or maybe someone in your life that isn't too invested in your relationship or who's willing to tell you the truth or give their opinion about what's going on based on what you're saying. Okay, so sometimes that could kind of, you know, help us see things more clearly as well. All right, so let's go over the full shebang just so we can get that clear because there's a lot of little sub steps in the big steps. So flexible mind is deep, identifying valued goals, particularly those related to relationships. So we have to determine our valued goal and the emotion we wish to express using one of those three body channels, those three different, emotional expressive channels. We have to effectively express matching our nonverbals with our valued goals, kind of like in those examples I gave before. Use self-inquiry to examine the outcome and learn, right? So reflecting back on the experience after we did it, and then practice it again and again consistently. Okay? So here we go. Good luck with that. Hope that works for you guys and makes some of your relationships a little bit better and more open. Go deep, okay? So have fun with this one, and I'll see you in the next time. All right, bye now.